Thank you, everyone, and good morning. It is actually my pleasure to welcome you all for our second edition of the Global Just Transition Dialogue, which we started last year on the sidelines of the G20 under India's presidency. We are actually truly honored. In fact, throughout the day, we have very distinguished speakers, we have sessions, and we are very honored to have the gathering of leaders, policymakers, industry experts, and representatives from civil society coming together to engage in what I believe is one of the conversations of immense importance today. As we all know, the transition to a low-carbon economy is no longer a distant goal. It is happening now and unfolding in every country and regions across the world. It is shaping how economies will perform in the coming years, how jobs will be created, and how the future of the world will be determined. However, this transformation must focus not only on what needs to be done, but how we will achieve it. And that is why we are all here today. Our Global Just Transition Dialogue is designed to facilitate the exchange of ideas among key stakeholders for developing and implementing effective strategies to support a just energy transition in the coming years. In the upcoming sessions, we will explore a broad spectrum of experiences from across countries of Global North and Global South, hear from our industry leaders on how they are navigating this shift, and how financial institutions, labor organizations, and civil society bodies are catalyzing the process. I would also like to highlight the timeliness of this dialogue today. With the upcoming climate negotiations in Baku, which is just around the corner, the discussions we are holding here today will have far-reaching implications, at least we hope. This is not just an exchange of ideas, but we take this as an opportunity to shape global strategies towards more sustainable and inclusive development. With that, I welcome you all once again to Global Just Transition Dialogue 2024. I would like to now invite our very distinguished inaugural session guests and speakers for the day. We always go by alphabetical order, and I'll follow that as a ritual of our organization. So first, I would like to welcome Shri Anil Kumar Jain ji. Sir, welcome on the stage. I really don't need to introduce any of them, but just as a brief introduction of Dr. Jain. Dr. Jain is currently holding the position of chairperson of the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board of the Government of India. He has served as the Secretary of the Ministry of Coal, Government of India, and more importantly, over the past 35 years, he has worked in multiple sectors of the government with a particular focus on energy and environment. I would also like to all of you to please look at the brochure because we are short on time, but the profile of all of our guests and speakers are in the brochure with their distinct contribution to the field of energy, environment, and climate change. Our next guest, I would like to welcome Shri P.M. Prasad ji. So welcome on the stage. Shri P.M. Prasad is the chairman cum managing director of Coal India Limited, which is the single largest coal producing company in the world. So we understand the significance of the voices of both Dr. Jain and Shri P.M. Prasad ji today. Sir has also served in positions of senior management actually in various subsidiaries of the company, including the Central Coalfields Limited before he became the chairperson of Coal India Limited. He has spent about 39 years in the industry with extensive experience and deep knowledge of varied facets of operation and management of the coal sector. Welcome, sir. And now, last but not the least, I would like to invite Mr. Chandrabhushan, who is the president and CEO of iForest. Also, who has proposed a very new methodology of the report on just transition finance that we are going to release today. I think that's a big contribution to the conversation on just transition that we are having now. So welcome, CB. As he goes by. I just have a small announcement to make. We were expecting Mr. Abhijit Narendra, who is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Steel. He has a meeting starting at 10:30 today, so he could not join because we were starting at 10:10. But he might be there sometime during the day. You will get the opportunity to interact with him in that case. But for now, we'll start the inaugural session, not awaiting further. Thank you.
You put the presentation up? Okay. Shri PM Prasad, my colleague Shrestha, friends, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I must congratulate Shrestha for bringing on the inaugural session the largest coal producer in the world and the regulator of oil and gas sector to discuss just transition. And I say this because for many of us who work in the environment field, when we talk about climate change and just transition, we try and talk within ourselves, the environmental community. But the discourse on just transition will require everyone to be on the same platform, whether we agree or we disagree. And therefore, I'm really happy, sir, that both of you are here on this panel at the second edition of Global Just Transition Dialogue. Today, we are going to discuss many issues. We are going to discuss issues of developed countries, developing countries. We will discuss finance. We will discuss skill. We are going to discuss technology. But let me first start with the central reason why we all are here today, climate crisis. In the last 2 weeks, the United States has experienced some of its worst extreme weather event in the form of Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. Hundreds of people have died. The losses are likely to be in excess of $200 billion. Just to contextualize, $200 billion is the combined GDP of Kenya and Tanzania. So you can understand the economic loss of extreme weather events. Here in India, this year was declared as the worst heat wave year. The city we are sitting in today, Delhi, recorded the highest ever temperature of 50 degrees Celsius. More than 200 homeless people died in May and June due to heat wave in the city. And Delhi this year has also recorded one of the highest rainfall, about 1,100 millimeters so far, which is about 50% more than the average rainfall of about 600 and 700 millimeter that this city gets. But these examples are not unique. Across the world, we have extreme weather events, forest fire, hurricanes, floods, and droughts. These are the new normal that we have to deal with. The question we need to ask is, how is the world actually reacting to these events? On the positive side, renewables are real. There's record level of investments happening in renewable energy, energy efficiencies. Utilities are installing batteries. EVs are on the roads. Positive signs as far as technology transition is concerned. But I want to actually discuss the political transition. What is happening in politics? And I want to take you back to the US. I'm sure many of you would have viewed the US presidential and vice presidential debates. I certainly did. They are quite entertaining. Apart from the entertainment value, there was some discussion on climate change. In fact, both presidential and vice presidential debate in the US has spent about 5-7 minutes on climate crisis. Timing is not important. What is important is what was discussed in context of climate change. Now, as far as Republican Party in the US is concerned, they are upfront denying climate change. In fact, the vice president nominee, J.D. Vance, refused in the debate to acknowledge that carbon emissions causes climate change. For Donald Trump, oil and gas is essential for making America great again. For everything from jobs to reducing inflation to growth, oil and gas is the answer that comes out of his mouth. So it's very clear that whenever anyone talks about climate change, the response of Republican Party is oil and gas. But what about Ms. Harris, the Democratic candidate? The Democrats have all the above energy policy. They want to invest in renewable energy, they want EVs on the road, but they also want fracking and drilling. And we need to understand why it is so, because most of the time we react as if we are dealing with some illiterate, unknowledgeable society. That's not true. We need to understand why political spectrum in the US, from left to right, supports fossil fuels. And the reason is political economy, politics and economic interest. Now, if you look at the map of United States, more than 95% of oil and gas is produced from states that are either Republican or are swing states. No Republican can become president of the United States by rejecting oil and gas. Texas, for example, the largest producer of oil and gas, is a Republican state. And therefore, Republicans cannot afford to reject oil and gas. And Democrats cannot win presidential election by rejecting Pennsylvania, a swing state. And therefore, Ms. Harris, who at one point of time opposed fracking, is now supporting fracking. So unless and until we understand the political implication of this transition in democracy and non-democracies, we will not be able to solve climate crisis. That is the point I am trying to make. And this politics is not going to be unique, is not going to be unique to the US. This politics is there in Europe. This politics will happen in India once we start discussing phase down of fossil fuel, which we all will have to do at one point of time. If we want to meet net zero emissions, we will have to start discussing phase down of fossil fuels. Now look at India, look at the map of India. There are 8 states with significant interest in fossil fuels, from Assam to Maharashtra. There are 200 parliamentary seats in these states. Once you start discussing phase down of fossil fuel in Jharkhand and West Bengal and Assam and Maharashtra, think about how the politics is going to be. And therefore, at iForest, we are very clear that climate crisis, the central issue of climate crisis is not technological transition. The central issue to solve the climate crisis is socio-economic transition. If we are not able to transition the social and economic system that we have right now, provide credible and realistic alternatives to people who are going to be affected by this transition, we will not be able to make this transition. And that is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, many countries across the world are now working on just transition. This is the just transition map of the world. And these are the countries and subnational entities who are now investing. So there's a slide which will come up, but these are the countries and subnational entities who are now investing in just transition. They have policies on just transition, and they are investing in just transition. Now, majority of them are in Europe. Obviously, you can see from the map. But it is happening in Indonesia. It is happening in South Africa. We have colleagues from Indonesia and South Africa who will participate today and share their experience. But it is also clear that this just transition is going to cost us. It is not going to be cheap, and it is not going to be easy. And therefore, today, I am happy to share that we are going to release a report, first of its kind, which is putting out a methodology to estimate the cost of just transition. It has gone through multiple revisions in last 1 year, But I hope this is the final version of the report, because we are learning and improving the methodology. But this is what the report is. This report has only looked at 2 sectors. Transition will be required in every sector. Every sector will have to be transitioned in a just and fair manner. Whether it is agriculture, steel, transport, urban, every sector will need to transition. But we have just focused on coal mining and coal-based power plant, thermal power plant in this report. I want to give you a sense of the kind of resources that will be required for this transition, just giving the example of these 2 sectors. For just coal mine and thermal power plant, you will need resources for reclamation and repurposing of coal mines. Mr. P.M. Prasad is here. The coal companies in India have close to 500,000 hectares of land that needs to be reclaimed and repurposed if we want a just transition of those communities. We will have decommissioning and green repowering of thermal power plants, because we cannot close thermal power plant and give nothing back to the communities. We'll have to invest in labor support and transition, economic diversification. The key to just transition is going to be economic diversification. How do we diversify the economy of these areas so that there is credible and realistic alternative for communities? Community resilience, green energy investment. We will have to invest in green energy to substitute what we will close down. Revenue substitution. Fossil fuel companies provide revenue to governments. That needs to be substituted. And then, of course, planning, administration, and capacity building. These are the broad costs that we will have to take into consideration for transitioning an economy. You can see the details of how we have done this methodology in the report, and I'll encourage you to take a copy of the report, which is outside. But this is what the cost looks like. For just transitioning coal and thermal power in India, we will need more than $1 trillion. As I said, this is not cheap. About half of that money is going to be required for green energy investment to replace what we will have to close. Just to replace what we will have to close will require $500 billion. And then we will require resources, billions of dollars in economic transition, economic diversification, coal mine closure, thermal power. So this is going to be a resource-intensive process. And it is also going to be a time-taking process. If anyone believes that this transition can happen in next 5 years, then they are either mad or deluding themselves. Okay? This transition is going to take decades. In fact, if we are lucky, we will be able to make this transition in the next 2.5 decades and maybe meet net zero target by 2050. So I think we have to be realistic about what we are dealing with to solve the climate crisis. This is another finding from the report, that there's equal investment required in energy and non-energy activity. But what is most interesting is, about 60% of investments that is required for just transition can be done by private sector, because they will make money. There's money to be made in just transition. But about 40% will have to come from public resources. And as you can see, in our estimation, about $420 billion out of $1.1 trillion will be required from public resources for just transition in coal and thermal power sector. Let me end by giving you some key messages that is coming out from our research at iForest. And we have been working on just transition over the last 5 years. You can go and see all our reports on our website. The key message is as follows, that just transition is central to climate action. We cannot accomplish energy transition at the expense of job loss and social instability. The political system itself will not allow. As you can see in the US, the wealthiest country in the world, some of the most educated society in the world is struggling in energy transition, precisely because of this reason. And as I said, this is valid for all countries of the world. We will require resources, trillions of dollars. Market will not be able to do it on its own. Public resources will be required. International financing will be critical. Many developing countries will not be able to do it on their own. They will require resources from either multilateral banks or developed countries to get this just transition done. And the current international financing situation is not very good. There was Just Energy Transition Partnership, which was promoted by few developed countries, hasn't worked very well. We will hear about it today. But our finding is that international finance will have to be far more ambitious. And lastly, we will need an international agreement. There are discussions happening at UNFCCC on just transition. We hope that we have an international agreement to catalyze action on just transition and climate action. Thank you very much.
So before we move on to our esteemed speakers, today we'll first release the report and we'll move on with our the inaugural address delivery of Mr. P.M. Prashad and Dr. Anil Jain. Thank you. Just to mention, there are a few copies outside, but all our reports are in public domain, so it can be downloaded from our website. And also there is a QR code you can scan to view the report. Thank you. With further delay, I would like to now invite Shri P.M. Prashad ji to deliver the inaugural address. Thank you, sir.
Respected Dr. Anil Jain Sahab, Sri Chandrabhushan ji, Madam Srestha, all the distinguished speakers today delivering from both the north and south regions of the world, and all the participants, ladies and gentlemen, press and media. I am honored to be present along with our mentor, my mentor. I worked under Dr. Anil Jain Sahab for almost 3.5 years. Before that also I have met him as I have seen him as Special Secretary MOEF. So he is having vast knowledge on both energy management and even at the same time with a great regard to the environmental aspects. MOEF and CC worked. And he was our guiding person at the Ministry of Coal from 2019 to 2022. Needless to say, the topic for the just transition and the global temperature is rising, we all know, and we will be preparing accordingly. As our Honorable PM has told, by 2070 we should have a commitment for net zero. Accordingly, we are working, and Coal India, but for sure, has started preparations at least from the last 3-4 years. And it is a lengthy process. Definitely, it cannot be done in 1 decade or 1.5 decade. Definitely, for looking for 2047, it is our first goal. By 2047, maybe almost 2.5 decades, we will be achieving many goals, and by 2070, it may be 4.5 decades, net zero is possible, and we are working and in different unit operations of mining, maybe in drilling, blasting, maybe in exploration. At every level, moderation and technological advancement is being done in drilling and blasting, for coal production, say a company like Mahanadi, out of 206 million ton last year they produced, 205 million is from surface mine coal. That means zero drilling, zero blasting, so less carbon emissions. Similarly, we are working on washeries. First non-coking coal washery after a gap of 3 to 4 decades has come in Ip coal field, and it is running very successfully. So for non-coking coal also, Ministry of Coal is thinking that we should go for washing. Coking coal washeries, new washeries are also in place. Similarly, many initiatives like sand from overburden, where even if you do a small percentage, WCL has achieved 3 to 4 lakhs sand as they have obtained from overburden washing. But at least that 4 lakh cubic meter we are saving from the rivers. So riverbed we can save like that. So every process we have to improvise. Similarly, the flagship project of FMC under our leader and guru, when he was there, FMC projects were rolled in 2019, and accordingly we have almost done around 10 to 12 projects successfully, and in the next 4 to 5 years, out of our production, 90% will be through first mile connectivity, rapid loading systems, thereby eliminating the complete payloader systems and the dust emission of the railway sidings. India has demonstrated in COVID, whether it is a developed country or developing country, leave it. We have demonstrated once we focus, we can deliver anything. So 4 decades from now, 3 decades from now, just we have started from the last 2-3 years for the just transition, especially mine closure activities. Even the current our Honorable Minister, Kishan Reddy Saab, whenever we speak, he emphasizes that focus should be on mine closure. Yesterday, my Secretary Coal has reviewed for 1.5 hours this mine closure activities. So now this has become a part of the curriculum. Just like ESG, we have to be very careful when our environmental, societal and governance, these goals, previously maybe 5-7 years back, we are not focusing. Now in board meeting also, we are almost every month we are telling what are the steps we are doing in this month to our board members, so that in the reviews also we are focusing on that. And I am pretty sure, as it has already, our focus is on this mine closure activities and this carbon emissions reduction, just like the power plants, Healy, high efficiency and low emission, already has come in place. Instead of this 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt, supercritical power plants, 660 megawatt and 800 megawatt are in place, FGDs are in place, and even with less water requirement, the new powerhouses are coming. Similarly, in our mining practices also, at each unit operations, we are inculcating the better and best practices. Even from, if you see in the sector, Neyveli is having one of the best environmental practices. Even in Bishrampur, our mine closure activities are doing, there is a lake we have opened for mine tourism. Different activities are going on. Even this plantation activities are also, last 3 years, Coal India is fulfilling ahead of their targets. Also, we are searching for the green patches wherever we are getting. We have got 2,500 hectares of land in different parts of different states for greening purposes from the MOEF. So we are focusing one side, though we are generating some dust emissions and other emissions, but other side, greening activities are also going in a big way. I am very much sure in the years to come, not only the focus will be on this mine closure activities, repurposing of land, reskilling of persons. Whenever we close a mine, what will be the fate of the communities there? In Jeria, we have opened skill development centers. We are taking it to other subsidiaries also. If we do proper skilling, at least in the next 2 decades, if we focus on skilling, once the mines are closed, the surrounding people, if they are skilled, and it cannot be done in a year or 2, it also needs at least a decade or 2 decades focus. And as you all know, at present, the mine closure costs, we are focusing on only reclamation. Most of the reclamation cost only 85 to 90%. only 10% for other things. So there is a planning to increase of this cost also. The Ministry of Coal is working, and last 5 to 6 years there is a lot of amendments, regulations have come for all these activities. I am pretty sure ministries, as they are focusing on this, and Coal India as an implementing agency, last year the coal sector has done 993 million ton, out of which our share is 773. So being 80% of coal production, the responsibility lies on us, and we have to showcase and demonstrate. In the future years, if we demonstrate, others in the sector also will follow, and I don't have any doubt we will vis-a-vis with the developed countries. I have just told the example of COVID, how we have demonstrated under our visionary leadership of Honorable PM. Again, we will demonstrate, even in this mine closure activities, our responsibility in with the surroundings, so that our focus, we will work on the surrounding population so that they also should be grown, and development will be there. Even DMFT fund is there. So a lot of amount is also being generated. If you work in a systematic way, I am pretty sure in the years to come, in the next 2.5 decades, by even 2047, things will be in place. Even as a CL diversification plans, we are going in solar. Recently, we have conducted 300 megawatts also, big contracts like 300 megawatts. Right now, we have installed around 225 megawatts. Within a 1.5 year, we will touch 1 gigawatt. We have to do 3 gigawatts to become net zero as a company as a whole, but we have kept a target of 5 gigawatts. Similarly, coal gasification, we have done tenders in a BOO method, but now we have changed. Coal India will invest. Instead of operators come and they invest. One plant in this Lakhanpur, along with BHEL, we have a JV. It has already in tendering stage. I am sure once if India's technology is successful, there are in the deposits we can go for gasification also. It will also take some time. For a first plant to come to make it success, it will take 5 to 6 years. So we are working on different things. Energy efficiency measures we already kept in place. So in each sub activity we are working on that. I am pretty sure as we are focusing, the results may come in a decade or 1.5 decade, but we are on the right track for going for this just transition and mine closure activities. Traditionally, these two, one is the mine closure, final mine closure, and concurrent mine closure. Yesterday also there was a deliberations. We are making a portal. In that portal, for the next 5 years, what will be the activities? Say FY25, FY26, FY27. Say X mine is there, say Kusumunda. What that mine will be planning for the next 5 years. Once you go through the portal, we will be seeing in the FY25, these are the activities, these are the targets. By seeing it will come very soon in public domain also. Anyone can see what are the mines targets assigned to that mine and how we are going to achieve. So this forward thinking is also in place, I am pretty sure. And I thank the organizers of iForest. They are one of the leading organizations who is working on just transition, and this is the need of the hour. As you have global warming is taking place, we have to act responsibly to ensure a brighter green future for our country, and I am pretty sure that we are going to achieve. I thank the organizers in inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And you already said that you want to lead by the example, being not just India's but world's largest coal producer. And I think having the word from Shri Prem Prasad ji that how the company is diversifying businesses, contributing to skilling, thinking in a forward-looking manner on reclamation and repurposing and retaining jobs and not just creating jobs provides a lot of confidence to all of us. It's what's going to be a challenge and what we look forward to in the next 30 years. With that, I would like to invite Shri Anil Kumar Jain ji for his inaugural address. Welcome, sir.
Shri PM Prasad, CMD, Coal India Limited, Dr. Chandra Bhushan, Shrestha, and august audience. Good morning to all of you. Let me first congratulate iForest and its founder, CEO, Chandra Bhushan, for mainstreaming this discussion. There are a number of think tanks all rendering valuable service. But on this subject of energy transition, just energy transition rather, iForest has been on it for the last several years. We had invited Chandra Bhushan to address all the coal executives, I think way back in 2021. A very fine report they had produced on Korba. And it was a revelation that normally when you enumerate or you estimate the impact of a coal mine closure or related to any other fossil activity which may get overtaken by clean energy technology, the impacts are only often considered limited to the formal work staff. His study on Korba was very revealing that actually the usufruct industry around, the transporters, the whole economy in a very large way gets impacted. In fact, they are the ones who are not protected and they need the cover, the protection of the just energy transition. So, very nice that you are continuing this dialogue. I think I was here last year as well. So, and all of you sitting here, I think I must appreciate that this is the august audience which will have to take this dialogue further. I was just thinking, Chandra Bhushan gave a very nice setting to this entire dialogue. And he raised some issues which are very subtle. You see, the topic of this conference does not include the word energy. It's just transition. But at the heart of the just transition lies just energy transition. And we have this report which talks of just finance as well. So I think the issue of energy transition from where it started, and then this word just got prefixed, has been with us for many years, maybe 2 decades, late 90s, early 2000s, when the Rio conferences and all these started. I think the energy transition has now come to be accepted. Energy transition is subtly underway and it must happen. It's happening autonomously, it is happening policy-led, and nobody denies, maybe fossil-rich countries, fossil-consuming countries, they don't deny that energy transition is a must. Call it clean energy transition, clean energy. But the word just, and then the dimension he added by bringing in the US debates, the political debates. Actually, we need to think about it, especially sitting in developing countries. We have, I'm told, delegates from Indonesia, South Africa, fellow developing nations, that the developed countries, which don't have much of a problem of just energy transition, tend to be more worried about fossil and non-fossil than, poorer countries. It's all about money. It's all about the returns, large returns to corporates, to the mega corporations. I mean, the issue of being allowed, of whether they should export more LNG or not, is a part of the election debates in the US. So it's not that there is any alarm on the supply of gas to the American consumer, but they're debating whether they should supply it to the world or not. So, in a way, the whether the world will have a just energy transition or not will depend a lot on the developed world as to how they interpret it. And this brings home for us people who are going to be impacted much closer home that a taxonomy of these terminologies is a must. Because I was just thinking that whether we talk of a global socio-economic order or a just energy transition, the technology-led, The actors are going to be different. The solutions are going to be different. Something is going to happen autonomously. Now, if technology makes solar power cheaper, Mr. Prasad will be out of business on his own. And if you hear from him, they are well prepared. They are doing coal, solar, they're thinking of coal gasification, they are washing coal so that they can get a better market, they can prolong the life of their coal. So it's not the corporates who are going to be worried. So this brings us to the first point which I wanted to make, that the energy transition is already underway. It has been under discussion for the last 20 years. But the other day, like Fatih Birol made a statement to the BBC that the targets for 2030 for clean energy are going to be outstripped by a factor of maybe 2 or 3, because he says it is cheaper for countries like us. It diversifies our energy portfolio. I remember almost 10 years back in 2015 or 16, when Australia was heading the G20. So I was there in that discussion, and they were discussing whether the developing country will adopt renewable, or will it only be something which the developed countries will do. I had mentioned that time that for us there is no option, because we are undersupplied with energy. We need to develop all sources of energy. And that thing still remains alive with us. We will continue to produce coal and consume it because we must supply our people with energy. So the fact that energy transition is already upon us is well recognized, but the just energy transition aspects are still being debated. So this brings me to the second point, that we should not land up in a situation where we start achieving net zero earlier by 2040, 2050, but the just transition has not happened. Now, Mr. Prasad will have migrated. Coal India, I mention him because he's the world's largest coal producer, Coal India Limited. They will have migrated to clean energy. They're thinking of doing pumped storages. Now, coal mining leads to formation of large pits, huge pits. So he's thinking of doing pumped storage in them. He may even develop golf courses there. And he has a lot of land. He may urbanize, he may offer those lands. You see, the coal producing areas have very good industrial infrastructure. They have huge railway network. They have a huge labor force. The power plants are also on site. Many of the large super thermal power plants are located in the coal mine. So there is energy, there is land, there is workforce, and they produce a lot of water, because when you dig and disturb the water table, they produce a lot of water. So these regions, the corporates will have no problem. But the large workforce which is engaged in coal mining, cleaning, transporting, and the communities around it, they will be left high and dry. So the second point which I wanted to make was that a transition to clean energy tends to be less energy intensive. In fact, that is the reason why things are cheaper. Why is solar cheaper? It's basically only cost of financing. There's no raw material used. Now, even the other forms of the transition, let's say in the transport sector, when you move to, let's say, more efficient forms of transportation like mass rapid transits or RRTSs, then there's the small auto rickshaw wala and the small taxi walas, etc. They go out of business. I mean, I'm not supporting them. We must have efficient transportation in the cities. But then with that, the employments are going to be impacted. So a just energy transition, which is actually a much bigger topic than mere supply of energy, supply of clean energy, employment, it's a whole lot of things. And iForest itself and many people have developed a lot of body of knowledge on these aspects. So this is the second thing which I wanted to mention, that the institutional preparedness, the socio-economic well-being, which Chandra Bhushan mentioned in his speech, are still works in progress. And these are problems of developing countries. The solutions have to be found by us. So this is something which needs to be debated, and this needs to be sorted out. And final point which I wanted to make, that this preparation of the economy of the society to move to a just transitional, just order, coming from a regulatory body that I do, I notice that globally now the energy regulators, the infrastructure regulators, be it even the SEBIs of the day of those countries, they are all now incorporating, inducting environmental goals into their activity. So this is something which we in India and maybe in the developing countries also need to think. In the oil and gas sector, the PNGRB is there. In the electricity sector, CRC is there. Let's say in the ports, there is TAMPI. Then there are the TRIs, the internet handlers. So maybe it's about time that we need to identify a new role, revisit the charter of these institutions while we develop the markets, while we do consumer protection, while we promote competitive markets. We also need to make sure that all this happens in a competitive, in an environmentally sustainable manner. If we bring in a very vibrant fossil market, but it is dirty, then there's no point. So this is something which may be a food for thought for iForest and for others, that I do read that globally this is happening. But in India, where the acts have been made and regulators and the government often have a frosty relationship, it will be important that it is laid down, and developing a new institution to usher in just energy transition and all the other challenges which have been identified earlier in many of our debates. What will be the institutional mechanism to usher in energy transition? So these institutions which have been created through acts of parliament are already there, and they could perhaps also be tasked to do this. So these are my thoughts for the day. I saw a very impressive lineup of speakers, and the North debate, the South debate, and then putting them all together. In the closure, you have some very high quality VIPs who have done lots of work in these areas and are well renowned. So my best wishes, CB, to you and to the audience. Thank you.